Jono, thank you very much for coming to the show. We highly appreciate it. You've been doing this for a while, being a professional cricketer. It's going to be great to hear your insight and your experience. So thank you very much for pulling through. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Duz, man. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I've been following these podcasts and I've been itching to get on one. They seem very exciting. So, yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jono. First of all, tell us, you made a move from the Warriors to the Dolphins. How's it been for you so far?
Look, it's cricketing-wise, it's been an awesome move. I feel like it's rejuvenated my career. Sometimes a change is good, and I really thought, I've come in to have new ideas, new faces, which has been really awesome. So I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I've enjoyed how the Dolphins go about things. So, yeah, 100% for me, the move has been awesome.
That's great. Jono, what season is this going to be for you playing professional cricket?
I think it's either 16 or 17.
Yes. Listen, I just want us to go a little bit deeper in terms of how do you normally prep for a season. People talk about pre-season, off-season, that sort of stuff. For you, how's it been over the years, and what advice would you give to people that actually are going through or go through that period leading up to the season?
Yeah, look, so for me, I will kind of do like a end-of-season review on myself, how I've gone about things in my various disciplines, so like batting and then bowling and then through various competitions. So like for me, it'll have a look, do I need to make any small technical changes? And this is also not a one day, like I just decided. It's almost like a 3 weeks to a month process where I really have to like think about it, because again, you don't want to change for the sake of changing, but you also can't just stay constant. You have to keep improving every single time. You have to look for something that will give you that little extra 2% or something like that, because that's the way the game's going at the moment. So that's kind of where I look at it, and it's probably more just aligning myself on, okay, in the first month back that I start again, what am I looking to do? Because I feel that like when you start, that is your first month, is your biggest month. Because if you want to make a technical change, you have to fully commit to it then. Not when you get to, let's say, August, September, and you're still contemplating whether I should be doing it. That, for me, that's too late.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like I have to like fully commit to that change. And it could be something small. Like for me, this past season, I maybe changed my guard slightly. That's literally all it has been for me. And obviously, when you change your guard, you might have to make a few technical changes or stuff like that. But that comes with it, kind of a thing. But as I said, when I got to like July, I was fully committed to it. There was no second guessing it. It was just straight in and just getting used to it day in, day out, kind of a thing.
And then leading into the season, in terms of your mental space, it's easy during the period where it's off season, but when it gets closer and closer, how do you feel in terms of nerves and, doing it now for performance, setting goals and that sort of stuff? How do you go about that?
Yeah, look, so again, you're always going to be I'm always going to be nervous going to a season. For me, it still gives me the butterflies, like, the day of going into our first game. It's going to be nervous. It's going to be exciting. You kind of, that morning, you like, almost, if it's a day-night game, you almost want the game to come and start, because that's how I always feel. Like, once the season starts, it's very exciting for me. So, yeah, I think if I ever lose that, it's probably time for me to call it. That's the way I would look at it. But yeah, luckily, I've as I said, I've played a couple of seasons that I understand the difference between like excitement kind of nerves or like really nervous maybe because you haven't done the work or stuff like that. And I've tried to always be the guy that's almost overtrained. So like I know that I've ticked every box, I'm ready, and I don't have to second guess myself whether, well, have I faced enough leg spin? Have I practiced the shot enough or something like that? That's kind of always the space I'd rather be in than, a week before the season starts, you're trying to play catch up. I've always, like, if it means I don't need to hit as many balls like within the last 2 weeks of the season, then I'm happy with that. I'd rather be in that space than feeling like I need to cram in the last few days.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think one thing that we're crying for in South African cricket is all-rounders. You've been someone who's been an all-rounder for many, many years. And how do you then handle the workload doing both disciplines?
Yeah, look, so this is going to sound a bit funny. So I've actually felt, when I came into the Warriors setup as a youngster, my bowling was never really considered. But I became a net bowler though. So you bowled and bowled and bowled and bowled. So I felt my accuracy was almost come through that, where you just bowled a high repetition and a high volume of balls. So I always feel like with bowling, obviously you have to bowl like leading into a season, but I'm always fairly confident in my bowling because of the work I've done over the years, because I'm never going to be a big turnover ball. For me, it's consistency. So if I feel my action's pretty good and the ball's coming out my hand pretty good, I'm actually kind of happy with it, because I feel, reading batters, all that kind of stuff, game plans to batters, because I'm a batter, I feel that comes quite naturally to me. So I always feel like I'm all right there. So like getting into game scenario in that competition phase between bat and bowler, I feel I'm pretty good in that. It's just, can I execute my skill? And generally the bowling I find comes quite naturally to me in terms of execution, in terms of landing the ball and everything. For me, the hardest one is always batting, even though it's actually my primary skill.
Yeah.
But there's so many variables for batting, like conditions, type of bowlers you're going to face, how you want to play, certain formats, stuff like that. That's where I find like you've got to like do a lot more mental prep. You've got to understand who you're coming up against, the conditions you want to play, the style of play maybe your team wants to play as well. I mean, you could be an aggressive batter, but you could be going into red ball cricket where, you need to actually defend a little bit more. They want you to take time out the game. You need to, bat long periods where they don't actually need you to score too quickly. So it's small things like that which I find batting is a little bit more up and down than as opposed to bowling.
Jono, the next question I wanted to ask you was mentally. What has been, or what have you picked up over the years for people say they're in a good mental space leading into the season, and what is required to be in a good mental space leading into the season?
Yeah, look, I think for me with bowlers it'll be, again, it's very cliche saying, it'll be how the ball's coming out the hand, and if they feel they can like almost execute their skill at will. But I find it as a bowler as well, it's a little bit easier because like as a bowler you've always got another opportunity. So if you land the ball in the right area and the batter whacks you for 4, for 6 or whatever the case may be, you've still got another ball at him next ball. Like you can come back at him the next ball. With batting, it's like sometimes you've got to bluff yourself. You could be hitting the ball unbelievably well, and in every single warm-up game you go 0, 5, 2, and like I was there as well. Like confidence comes from performance, but sometimes there's no guarantee in performance. You can train as hard as you want, you can hit as many balls as you want, you can be batting unbelievably well in the nets, but it's not coming. And you've actually got to bluff yourself. You've just got to have self-belief. That's my biggest one. You have to believe in your own ability. And I mean, Kevin Peterson's saying is, if you don't believe in yourself, no one else will, kind of a thing. And like, I'm not saying you need to go and be arrogant and tell everyone how good you are, but you have to have that desire and that belief in yourself. And when it comes, your opportunity comes, you have to take it with both opportunities. So if you've been struggling with a couple of runs, you get to 40, you can't throw it away. You need to go and get where you face lots of balls and you get going and you score a big score. Because all of a sudden the next game, where normally you might go 40 and then you get a 10, the next game you might go 120 and then you might get 80. Now that swing of in 2 games you got 50 runs, and the other 2 games you got 200 runs. It's a big difference.
Massive difference.
It's a huge difference. And that's where a season can change sometimes. I mean, I've seen it so many times where, players are struggling, they get in a game and they go big. Like in 4-day cricket it might be 150, in 1-day cricket you get 120. All of a sudden straight after that their next 3 scores they've gone 180 and a 90, and all of a sudden they're flying, just like flying. That. Whereas if maybe they'd thrown it away on like 60, the next 3 scores could be a 30, a 20 and then a 10, and all of a sudden their numbers don't look too good, but they're playing extremely well, but it's just you haven't taken full advantage of that. And I feel that's where the game sometimes where the game has changed now. Is you're playing such an aggressive brand of cricket. Sometimes guys get carried away with that. Like sometimes you are actually allowed to take your time, and that's across all 3 formats. You can in a T20 game. It doesn't mean like from the 12th over you got to look for 6s all the time. You can actually still bat normally for another 3 overs, and that might take you from like a 40-50 and get you to like a 60-70. And then you launch and you end up getting a 90 or 100 in a T20 game. Whereas if you went from ball 1, the guy might have bowled a good ball, but boundary fielder could take a one-handed catch or something like that, and you're out for 40. And we do play in a numbers game and stuff like that. So it's a tough one. So yeah, but I mean, that's why batting's so hard, I suppose.
Yeah, that's good. It's what I enjoy, Jono, with you. You've got lots of experience, a lot of knowledge on the game. What are your pillars? What are the things that you believe are very important as a cricketer for you? Even if it's 3-4 things that you say, this what makes me as a cricketer, and I stand by these things, and that's what makes me a holistic cricketer and ready for the game when it's time to play.
Yeah, look, it's actually been quite a tough one, because if I had to look at my numbers, especially in white ball cricket, I'd probably say, one day cricket mainly, I'd look and I'd go, I haven't got enough hundreds. Like, I would personally look at that. But then I also have a look in I was very fortunate to play with, I still think he's probably right up there as one of South Africa's best domestic players, probably up with Morne van Wyk and Colin Ingram in 50 over cricket. And he was unbelievable to play with. And I played a lot with him when he was in his prime and scoring runs. And I almost took it upon me to almost be the guy who takes pressure off him in terms of scoring. So I always used to be the aggressive guy, always looked to taking risk. Well, for me it wasn't risk, but just playing a very, high risk cricket, looking for boundaries option, taking fielders on, stuff like that. And if I look at my numbers, I've often got out for a lot of 70s and 80s. Probably trying to force it too much. And look, he's told me many times, Colin's told me many times, just take 5 overs. Knock it around for 5 overs when you get to that stage. You've earned the right kind of a thing. So, I almost tried to do that a few times, and then I'd go completely into my shell. And then, you're flying, you've got 80 of, let's say, 70 balls, and the next thing you know, your next 5 runs have come off 20 balls. And it's like you've almost killed the whole momentum in the game, and you've brought the other team back in. So for me, I've tried to always say to myself, can I make match-winning contributions? And sometimes that might only look like an 80, but what it does is allows someone else to then knock it around a bit. He then gets the 100 off 120 balls or something like that. But I've also identified sometimes I also need to be that guy who gets the 100 off 130 balls, because I can't just be, it's almost in a selfish way to say I'm just going to be the guy who takes risk all the time.
Yeah.
Because, if we're playing a game and we're 20 for 2, I can't just be the guy to say I'm just going to keep playing my way.
So words like the more aggressive guy, the enforcer, the guy that looks to take on the bowling attack, those are the type of characteristics you would say in your batting style is what you look at.
Yes, I've always felt like I want to create a presence that when bowlers bowl to me, they know I'm coming at them, I'm looking to score against them. Not slog, but just score. Because I feel like that's when I play at my best. That's when he slightly misses, and I can sometimes make him slightly miss. Sometimes, I've hit him down the ground two times in a row. He will drag one short that you can then pounce on with a cut or a pull shot or something like that. Whereas I feel like too many times where I've looked to bat time and be in my shell, I can't score.
Yeah.
Guys can then I'm almost like a target, and guys can just bowl at me, and I feel that that's not the way I play. I always look to try and dominate and try and play my way. And what I have learned over the years is that playing your way in terms of a dominating way is not necessarily determined by your strike rate. Sometimes you can still be striking only at 70 in a one-day game, but you're still playing in a dominant way. You've just hit fielders, guys have bowled well to you, stuff like that. And I feel early on in my career, that's where I'd let it slip too many times. I would have a 30 off, let's say, 45 balls, and I feel like I'm batting awfully because my strike rate says I'm not scoring it, I'm struggling to get going and stuff like that. Meanwhile, you might be playing on a wicket where guys have bowled well to you, you've hit mid-on, mid-off on a regular basis, they've bowled a length that hasn't really allowed you to hit it over the top or something like that, but all it is just one change bowler to come in, miss his length a few times, and next thing you know, you had run a ball. And I've always felt early on in my career, that's where I missed it. I didn't take it deep enough, I didn't fight it out long enough, and I think that's something I've, and obviously you still are going to mess it up a few times.
Yes.
Normal, but that's something I've tried to say to myself. I've got to stay in the fight just a little bit longer. And often it's only 3 overs, 5 overs kind of a thing. But that's what I've tried to do over the years. And again, I haven't always been consistent at doing it, but I feel that's something I've gotten a bit better at, because the last few years I feel like I've scored a couple more hundreds as opposed to early on in my career.
That's good, Jono. To finish off, and thanks so much for the advice. I think someone who's listening to this can take a lot out of it. 16 years of professional cricket is not child's play. So there's lots of experience, and the small gems that you're speaking about will go a long way for people that are listening. But my last question to you, there's a season coming up. What are your goals, or do you go in with no goals, and how do you go into a season for this specific season that you're going into?
Yeah, look, so for me, I used to be a guy who put numbers down, kind of a thing. I kind of changed a little bit from that. I don't actually look down at numbers because, again, so I'll say to myself, for example, this season, let's say I want to get 300s in the one-day campaign. But then you've also got to look sometimes, you've always got to take it with a bit of pinch and salt, because we could chase every game. Our bowling attack could be absolutely gone, and we end up chasing 220 on 5 times. And those 5 times you get 80 not out, which almost is like 100, but it's not. So I've learned to, for me, I've always said match-winning contributions. That's my big one. How can I influence a game? And, I'm very fortunate, though, that I do get to do it with both bat and ball. So I feel it's a little bit easier for me. So that's why, for me, I've always looked at match-winning contributions. However, I also can't hide behind the fact that, if I get a 40 and then I get a 3-for, according to what I've said, I've maybe done my job, but that's not what I need to aim for. The 3-for kind of take care of itself, but that 40 needs to be an 80 or an 100 or something like that. So it's always striving to get better and stuff like that. And I think if you ask every batter, whenever they're batting, did you leave runs out there? Everyone will say yes. Ben Stokes the other day got 180.
Yeah.
When he walked off, he's like, I've left a double 100 out there. I can guarantee you, he said that to himself.
Yeah.
He had 4 overs left, So I think if you have that mindset and that mentality, I think you're always going to keep pushing yourself to do more and to be better. So I think that's something I always look to try and do. Again, doesn't always happen, but I feel at least if you've got that mindset, you've got a chance.
That's very, very true. I think a lot of people say they rather remain students of the game because you're constantly learning, looking to improve, and trying to be the best player you can be. Any last words, Jono, in terms of youngsters that want to be in your position and play 16 years of professional cricket? Any advice from you?
I think my biggest thing is you've got to love training. If I look in South Africa, we probably say we don't play enough cricket, especially domestically. So the only way you're going to learn is to practice, I'm afraid to say. It's sad, yes. We all would love to be playing more games, double round of one-day competition, double round of 4-day cricket or 10 games. We all would love it. But the fact is, we don't have the time and probably the money to do it, kind of thing, which is fine. That's acceptable. And, SA20s come in, which takes, 2 months out of the calendar for us to play. And I think SA20 is only going to make our cricket better. But I think as a young player, you've got to love training. You've got to love the grind, because I feel that's if you can't learn by playing, the only other place you're going to learn is by training, and
that's
you're going to have to love doing it. And the big one for me that always stood out was I heard a story about Mark Hussey before he played for Australia. I don't know what county he was at, but he was at the same county as Monty Panesar. And Monty loved to bowl, he loved to bat, and they would play like a test match day at training one day, where they would bowl from Monty would bowl to him for an hour and a half. They would then go and have lunch. They'd come back and he'd bowl to him for another hour and a half. They're going to have tea, and then another last session at the end. And I just thought but that's obviously quite extreme, but I just thought he loved practicing as well. And I feel if you're not playing lots of cricket, you have to love practicing, because it's going to be difficult. It's going to be tough. You're going to practice when you're exhausted, but for me, it's only going to help you getting better. When you get in the heat of the battle, if you can rely on all those balls and those hours that you batted in the nets, it's only going to do you good. I think if I look at all the greats that have probably lived, I'm pretty sure not one of them have hit very few balls in their life. They've probably hit loads and loads and loads and loads. So
it's true.
That's the way I've always done it, and I was lucky to grow up. I had a younger brother, my father, and he threw loads of balls to us. We played a lot, practiced in the nets all the time, and I feel that's what's kind of, held me in good stead in my professional career, because I always feel you can rely on coaches as a player, and coaching always helps, but you've also got to be your own coach. You've got to understand what you do, because when you take guard in the middle and you've got to face Dale Steyn, or you've got to face Hassaf Ralph or someone like that, the coach is not there to help you. You've got to do it yourself. Suppose same with bowling as well. You know, if you're at the top of your mark and you're bowling to a David Warner in a T20 game or Mitchell Marsh, you there. The bowling coach and the head coach are not there to tell you what to do and everything. You're there by yourself, and you've got to have 100% belief in yourself. So that's kind of the mantra that I live by.
Thanks so much, Jon.
Thanks,
Appreciate it. Thank you for making the time.
Thanks, Duzi. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much. I hope guys can obviously get knowledge from it, and